We're going to present awards to some very special people. And it starts off, well, I'd like to start it off by asking Carol Brown Goldberg to come to the podium and to introduce the first honoree. Carol is an award-winning artist who has shown internationally in more than 100 solo and group shows. Her work is in museums around the world, and she was the recipient of Moments 2018 Creativity Award. Carol? Carol, you should come to the podium. You're too caught up in the Nationals auction. Yes, over here.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to present the first award and to Aviva Kempner. She is everyone's dear friend, not just my dear friend, but I feel so honored to be able to talk to her directly. She's a prolific film documentarian who has dedicated her filmmaking career to focusing and highlighting the spirit of Jewish American heroes. The Partisans of Vilna, the documentary on Jewish resistance during World War II, had been an untold story until this film was produced by Aviva. It introduced many of us to that world, as well as to her courage and sensitivity in producing the film. Aviva has a passion and devotion in reflecting the spirit of Jewish heroes, their joy, their perseverance, and their contributions to society. Her films are a reflection of that spirit. I'm not ad-libbing anything, I'm reading every word. Just her film, Yoo-Hoo, Mrs. Goldberg, is about Gertrude Berg, a popular American radio and television personality who received the first Best Actress Emmy in history and paved the way for women in media and entertainment. The life and times of Hank Greenberg is about the first Jewish baseball star in the major leagues and the anti-Semitism he faced throughout the 30s and 40s. Rosenwald tells the story of businessman and philanthropist Julius Rosenwald. Okay. Who partnered with Booker T. Washington and African American communities to build more than 5,000 schools across the Jim Crow South. And The Spy Behind Home Plate is about Mo Berg, a Jewish baseball player who played in the major leagues in the 20s and 30s and who was a spy for the US government and played a major role in efforts to undermine the German atomic bomb program in World War II. And as if these films were not enough, for decades, Aviva has generously opened her home. Some call it Gaudi West, in celebration of others, whether in cinema, theater, or on the political stage. Thank you, Aviva, for being an inspiration for all of us and for continuing to include and bring to us your amazing vision. It is my great, absolute honor to present you with Moments 2019 Creativity Award.
Yoo-hoo! Thanks to Carol Goldberg for her lovely introduction. What you might not know, in my office that I work every day and I write mad emails late into the night, there's a painting that she made of one of the firemen, the rescuers during 9/11, people who I really admire too, that I have on my wall. So I'm very happy to have her as the presenter tonight. And I'm also very grateful to her and her husband, Hank, Hank Goldberg. Actually, I've made your name famous twice, Hank, for their generosity in the past with my films and actually including a couple of tables tonight. Now, it's wonderful to have the Emcee as Robert Siegel. We all love the voice. And I loved my interviews on All Things Considered. But why, Robert, did you have to quit before I retire, before I was finished with my films? I still want you to be interviewing me. And I so admire Nadine for rescuing the paper, the magazine, and also for keeping Danny Pearl's memory alive. My only complaint is that they don't cover more Jews in baseball, and no, Sandy Koufax will not let me do a film on him. I want to thank the entire staff of Moment for putting this on, especially Jonah, whose patience had helped me with the seating. I want to tell you, Jamie, I could be an expert on gerrymandering for the Democrats after moving these tables around. And also to Pat for her patience. A special shout out to my longtime friends, super editors, Diane Boltz and Amy Schwartz, and also Amy and her husband, Eric Koenig, for supporting my films all these years. And a hearty muzzle tough to all of you in the audience. I'm honored to share tonight's stage with Phyllis Greenberger, who I almost made her last name famous except for the ER, for her feminist concerns for women's health, especially true in this Me Too era. And also the whole theme of journalism in herring times is really important to me. My last two films have had the viability of newspapers at the end of my movies. That means newspapers that I read, and there's piles by my couch as we speak. And I really believe that you miss in magazines and newspapers, et cetera, reading them online. You have to read them in person. But of course, I still have a flip-top phone and use AOL. You know, as a documentary filmmaker, I also do a lot of research, and I'm also a writer. But I really admire all of you who are under the gun every day reporting news. It's just so different than what the luxury I have as a documentary filmmaker. It's great to be with all these esteemed members of the Fifth Estate, even Osnos with his honest reporting on China, and with the presenter Tom Friedman, except you can never say Tom's name, just his name. It's, did you read Friedman's column today? Friedman, yes. And the esteemed Judy Woodruff. It's great to have friends in the audience like Wolf Blitzer, who is my go-to 6 p.m. news, sorry Judy, every night. And to my dear friends, also in the Fifth Estate, Lynn Sweet with her Windy City, Chicago Beat, and my good dear friends Dan Raviv and Natan Gutman, who do outstanding reporting for the Middle East and the Jewish world. And I really admire Aaron Davids Miller, quest for peace and always writing about it, like he did this week with former Ambassador Kurtzer. I'm also thrilled to be on the same podium with Nina Totenberg, whose legal reporting is so enlightening. And if you've never read the story of how her father's violin was recovered, you're missing one of the greatest gone right stories ever. Also, great admiration for Jamie Gerlich, whose service as the Deputy Attorney General showed how that agency can represent Americans' interests, legal interests, but not to be at the president's whim. Now I'm going into a lot of thank yous. This is a perfect segue, talking about legal, for me to thank the 1976 DC bar examiners for flunking me not once, but twice. Although my mother's never wanted me to say it, I did do well in law school. So someday I want to find those people and thank them, because then I went on and became a filmmaker. So 40 years ago, to get this award this week is really important, because 40 years ago this Thanksgiving, I went home and I came back committed to making a film about Jewish resistance against the Nazis, a topic as a child of a Holocaust survivor had obsessed me for years. And it's certain role models in my own family that allowed me to overcome obstacles and make the switch. First and foremost is my mother, my late mother, Hanka Czesla, who passed as a Polish Catholic, a shiksa, in Germany during the Holocaust, came to America and became an amazing abstract expressionist painter. She inspired such a creative streak in me, and the legacy continues as I'm so proud of my niece Piero, who is now also painting and surprised me tonight. My late father, Chaim Kempner, a proud Litvak like my Uncle Poe, who taught me to be a proud Jew, love baseball. He would take us, every time he would take us to Kol Nidra services, he would talk about Hank Greenberg. I thought Hank Greenberg was part of Kol Nidra services. And also my father taught me to be sympathetic to the civil rights movement. Sadly, Pops made Aliyah to Israel and died shortly thereafter. And he never knew about my filmmaking, but he took us yearly to see Fiddler on the Roof in Detroit, and I know he'd be thrilled to hear the music tonight, especially in his lovely Yiddish. Unfortunately, all I know how to do is swear fluently. I'm also indebted to my uncle Dudek Cheshla, who survived Auschwitz, came to America, and as David Chase became a business success and was so generous to my filmmaking and also gave me the funds for that house that I have all my Gaudi West soirees in. And to my stepfather, Professor Milton Kavinsky, who taught me to appreciate history and having a great sense of humor. And my brother Jonathan, or as we call him, Johnny Boy, who's not only a board member on Cheshla, has been so supportive both financially, has spread my announcements all over the world, and shares both our humor of our fathers and the Detroit MOT, and fellow Midwesterners, you know what that means, members of the tribe, radar for figure out who's Jewish, also called the Bubby Alert. I'm so proud of my sister-in-law who's here tonight, who also inspires me, who, by the way, met my brother at my house, so I count her as one of my 14 marriages. And by the way, you know who I'm talking to. There's a 15th one, I hope, in the works one day soon. For all the critical work she's doing about global warming, especially documenting the detrimental effects on the youth. And all I can say is, I went to the University of Michigan. I passed out leaflets against the war at the Rose Bowl. Everyone ignored me. And right on to the Yale and Harvard students for what they did about global warming yesterday. I'm so proud of my niece Delaney Kempner, who surprised me also tonight, who's serving as the Deputy Director of Communications and Senior Advisor to New York State Attorney Letitia James. I am sure someone who lives right nearby here is losing a lot of sleep over what she and other attorney generals are doing. And at least with my niece Eliza, the one practicing lawyer in the family, she continues her activism over animal rights and leading a pure vegan life. But quite frankly, can you imagine leading a Jewish life without locks and a schmear? I don't get it. I'm also thrilled to have my Detroit cousins, Sarah Kempner, who keeps my beloved Avalon Theater flush, and Rena Gordon, who keeps the Litvak Yiddish alive, and their brother Josh for buying a table and always supporting me, and their generation and their kids' generation for all being proud Democrats and having the desire to repair the world, especially in education. Also, special thanks to my dear friend and lawyer, copyright expert Janet Fries, who pro bono advice year after year for the Cheshla Foundation. I can't name everyone here, all my friends who are here, we'd be here all evening, whose support has kept me ticking. But our common passions for baseball, delicious food, beautiful art, political solidarity has nurtured me throughout my film career. I'm especially proud, though, for one person, Morsel Nathan and I, for starting the Jewish Film Festival here and a showcase for filmmakers like myself at the JCC. And I'm especially glad to have from New York my best friend, Eva Fogelman, who came here for this event. She's also on my board, and I admire her scholarship and therapy with Holocaust survivors and descendants who clarify for us as second generation, including many of you in the room, that we are motivated never to forget and to human rights for others. Now, it's just not chutzpah that makes me a good producer. It helps a lot in terms of foundations and people you know. First of all, my Uncle David was my first supporter. Then all of you, because the National Endowment for the Humanities came through. Thank you for all of you who have given me power parties and contributed to the Cheshla Foundation that's named after my grandparents who died in Auschwitz. And not one of you who gave me money asked for anything quid pro quo, except just make the best film possible. I do want to mention a couple people here and their foundations that have helped me throughout. One is Danny Weiss with his family members and the Rubin Foundation, Sharon Karmazan and her daughter Dina with the Karma Foundation, Ken Grosinger and Micheline Klasberg with Cross Currents, and Ron and Ann Abramson. And I will never forget, Ron, that your father, Sonny, in the 40 years I've made films, called me up and says, Aviva, I want to give you money. That was pretty great. Now, luckily, for my last thing, Moberg, William Levine paid for the whole thing. It was never happened before. So you all generous donors could go to give somewhere else. But don't feel neglected, because my new film about how when they built the Congress, they never built it thinking there would be female senators. The women had to fight for potty parity to be able to have bathrooms near the chambers. I'm calling the film Pissed Off. And I want it to be ready in time for either a woman, vice president or both in 2020, a year since we got the vote. I'm especially proud to have profiled Julius Rosenwald as a role model in philanthropy, and to have one of the fund's recipients' daughter, Charlene Drew Jarvis here, whose father, Charles Drew, was who did such breakthroughs in medical history, and also admiring Wade Henderson, who's somewhere here, also in the civil rights movement. And in conclusion, this Creativity Award is not just mine. It's those partisans who under fire from the Nazis wrote songs. It's Gertrude Berg, who wrote 10,000 scripts that are husband-typed under facing sexism and McCarthyism. It's my two great baseball players, Hank Greenberg, who fought anti-Semitism on the field, and Mo Berg, who himself had to worry every day being a nuclear spy. So I think the best thing is that I dedicate this award to the immigration reform that's listed at the end of my film. All my subjects were children of immigrants, and no matter what Stephen Miller, a Shonda to the Jewish people, says, we should not have restrictive immigration policies, and you should read Mark Fisher's great piece in Moment. As an immigrant myself, I dedicate this award first to the 700,000 dreamers that I hope will be able to safely remain in this country. And my one fictional piece talked about how the Jews mistakenly vote for Buchanan. We have to have fair elections, not with interference from any other country. And we have to keep on electing brilliant congressmen like Jamie Raskin in a fair way, whose mother was a dear friend and who taught us all it was all right to have hot flashes. I'm also dedicating this award to two previous winners, Joe Nathan and Alan Gerson, who's facing life challenges, and our prayers are with them, and most of all, RBG, who we hope very much a full recovery. How many people live in the District of Columbia? So finally, this is dedicated to voting rights in the district and call ourselves senators. Why are you coming up? Oh, he's getting me off. Okay.